Science, Spirit, and Awe. Pierre Teilhard de Chardin was born in 1881. He studied for the Jesuit priesthood, and after completing those studies, he entered the world of paleontology. When World War I began, he was called to serve on the front lines as a stretcher bearer, where he earned many honors for his bravery and compassion. While there, in the midst of the terrible violence of war, he wrote essays that expressed the new Christianity that he imagined. Returning to France, he dedicated himself to, quote, the great work of creation and sanctifying humanity. He wrote, there is neither spirit nor matter in the world. The stuff of the universe is spirit matter. No other substance but this could produce the human molecule. Teilhard completed his doctorate in paleontology in 1922 at the age of 41. He wanted to do field work, but taught at a Catholic institute in Paris, where he was very much loved by his students. April 1923 brought an opportunity to sail to China to work with Father Émile Lisson. Teilhard went through an agonizing period of self-doubt, but once he and Lisson made their way to the Ordos Desert, he found himself, while together they found the first unquestionable evidence of Paleolithic humans. Teilhard returned to Paris in 1924, concerned with the problem of reconciling Christian faith with evolutionary theory and finding a philosophical perspective that would hold both science and faith, where theology would have to embrace a new view of evolution, and scientists would discover the spiritual dimension of that knowledge. Theology and science would have to emerge from their respective containers and merge into a greater understanding of the cosmos. Not surprisingly, for expressing thoughts like that, Teilhard was silenced by the church and essentially banished from Paris. So he returned to China and wrote his heretical, dangerous thoughts in two major essays, Le Milieu Divin, 1927, and Le Phénomène Humain, which we heard, the Phenomenon of Man, in 1930. Neither of these was allowed publication until after his death. Like Hegel, who had said that, quote, nature's purpose is the realization of its spiritual component, Teilhard, in what he called cosmogenesis, viewed each moment, each now, as a moment within the ongoing creation, beginning with the alpha point, the divine spark within all matter, and leading to the omega point, the ultimate collective consciousness in which all things will be reconciled. Still not allowed to teach in Paris, Teilhard traveled to India and to America, and then to China, where he was when China was invaded by Japan in 1937 and fully occupied in 1939. Teilhard and his colleagues were moved to Peking, where they lived until the end of the war. Again, feeling despair from having been silenced by the church and from living under occupation, Teilhard began to find fellowship gradually with a group that gathered daily. And he, being descended from Voltaire on his mother's side, became himself the good-humored person who lifted others' spirits. When peace came at last, Teilhard returned to Paris and suffered a heart attack, making him delay a trip to South Africa to study the Australopithecus. Instead, the church sent him to New York. He returned once more to Paris and felt so restricted in his work and his voice, he returned to New York City in 1954. Never losing his faith, but knowing he was losing his health, Teilhard prayed for a good end and made a wish to die at Easter, which he did on the afternoon of Easter Sunday, April 10th, 1955, 8 days before the death of Albert Einstein, who, like Teilhard, lived in rapt awe of the great holy mystery. Part 2. In June, this past June, returning to my car after our Fling event, a guided tour of the Sterling mine in Ogdensburg, I wondered, what is this feeling? From learning about the work of the miners, from walking inside the earth, and then seeing the glowing zinc ore under the ultraviolet light, it was a feeling of awe, a feeling that a great truth had been revealed to us. We knew there's something truly amazing beneath the surface of the earth. And perhaps if the lighting were a bit different everywhere, we'd see everything glow, and we would live in this sparkling, lit-up world. But yes, of course, we do. Have you seen the shining surface of the lake? The red leaves glistening in the afternoon sunlight? This is our world. Mary Oliver writes in her poem, Praying, it doesn't have to be the blue iris. It could be weeds in a vacant lot or a few small stones. Just pay attention, then patch a few words together, and don't try to make them elaborate. This isn't a contest, but the doorway into thanks and a silence in which another voice may speak. For some of us, I'm sure, stepping out of the world of material technological wonders and into a different world where hard thought opens to spirit is a common, graceful move. Many of us have experienced moments of knowing or sensing that we could not explain. I'd say that I'm generally a here and now person who sees something truly magnificent and assumes that it can be explained by science, which can make it seem even more miraculous. Earlier in June, in Vermont, I visited a friend who later in the afternoon was planning to take part in a small circle of people telling stories of mystical experiences. I went with her to the town hall in Ferrisburg. As a first-timer, I took in the beautiful stories, some sad, some funny. We sat in silence after each person spoke. I could have mentioned the time I was walking in the desert in Egypt near the caves of the Desert Fathers when the hair stood up on my arms, this unfamiliar feeling, startling, but certain. When I said quietly, I've been here before. In the circle, I didn't speak. My friend didn't speak. I wondered if she would tell the story that I was thinking about. It happened around 2012. I was in New Mexico for a week-long class, and before breakfast received a group email from her that said she wished for our prayers and best thoughts as she was going to have surgery the next day to remove a synthetic hip that had begun to dissolve with metals like cobalt, causing fluid to build up around her heart. It was a really dangerous situation. I thought about her when I received this email. I thought about her being in a hospital, probably Fanny Allen Hospital in Burlington. But there was something odd, something cold about that. I sent my thoughts of love to wherever she might be, and then an image came to me of my cousin, Dr. Lynch, the son of my father's first cousin, Bud. Dr. Lynch, who lives in New Hampshire, is an orthopedic surgeon whom I had briefly seen 3 years earlier when my grandson was born at the hospital where he works. I pictured him in his surgical garb, leaning toward my friend. During the week, I waited for news, and maybe 2 weeks later received a grateful message that my friend had survived the surgery. The bad synthetic hip was removed and replaced by a new hip made by a different company. And a few weeks after that, speaking on the phone, I began to ask questions about the surgery, and my friend didn't want to get into the details. I understood. I sent a letter apologizing for the many questions and explained, for some reason, I imagined that you were in Hanover for the surgery and that my cousin, Dr. Lynch, was there with you. She called. Dr. Lynch is your cousin? He saved my life. Sitting next to that same friend, hearing stories of mystical experiences, I didn't tell that story, but felt its presence. At this time of Halloween, All Saints, and today, All Souls, they say that the veil is thin between the worlds of matter and spirit. Teilhard would say that there is no veil, no wall, and that we live in the presence of and are made of spirit matter. It sometimes amazes me that anything exists at all, and that there is such a thing as life. I do also wonder, does knowing a bit more of the science make me more in awe of what I'm seeing? Often, yes. And with the open invitation into the world of spirit matter, of consciousness, when we reach the place of seeing the world in a new light, do we enter that magnificent world? And so, finally, this question: are we here yet?